All right, welcome back. Tending Fire, men's groups, men's community here. Today, I'm going to be talking about rites of passage. And it's something that I really wanted to include on the welcome page, the description of the men's groups. But I ended up taking that off of the page because I felt like it's just too much to have there. It's not, the first thing that catches your attention. Maybe it does for some people. I know for me, rites of passage have always been so important. And I want to talk about it, from a kind of indigenous perspective as well as a Western psychological perspective. So my own experience is I met a native elder named Hawk's brother, is what he called him, who he called himself. That was his name. He was he's still alive, and I worked with him for about 6 years in upstate New York. He's Algonquin, the medicine chief of the Algonquin Quinnipiac Tribal Council, which is based in Connecticut. He's also, a master practitioner of Tai Chi and Qigong, and so I studied that with him, as well as shamanic healing and philosophy. And when I first met him in 2006, I had a very powerful experience, which I'm not going to go into right now, but suffice to say, he was the person who I felt like, look, I need to be initiated. I said that to him at some point, and he said, "Okay, great." And I started working with him, and over time, I ended up doing a vision quest with him for the first time, which was really powerful. Since then, I've done that a number of times, but those things are really important for men, especially. It's something I've been thinking about for many, many years. That first rite of passage when you turn 13, in many cultures. And I grew up Jewish, so I had my bar mitzvah, and in native cultures, they do other things. And for me, the bar mitzvah, there were certain things that I experienced, some fears around public speaking, I suppose. But, there was a sense of I had practiced it so much that I kind of wasn't all the way present, when I had that experience. And I think that's the case for a lot of young boys going into their teenage years, and then from teenage years into young adulthood as a young man, and so on and so forth, that we don't have rites of passage that are held in our culture. One of my mentors, John Young from the Eight Shields Institute, he says we're doing culture repair work right now, reweaving the fabric of culture, and rites of passage are one of those elements. And my teacher, Hawk's brother, he used to say, no one can initiate you. You need to initiate yourself. He said, many are called, but few are chosen, because you need to choose yourself. So, that's a huge part of modern day rites of passage, that it's not part of our modern literacy that we do rites of passage anymore in any sense of any conscious, intentional way. We call it something else. Graduating from college. It has that activation in our ancient memory, but we don't call it a rite of passage anymore in an explicit way. In a cultural or tribal community way. So it's very important. It is my experience. For me, it's been very important. I wouldn't be where I am today if I haven't gone through many, many rites of passages that have been conscious and intentional. That's why I'm doing it, to go through a portal, a doorway, and come out a different person, to break through fear and anxiety and feelings of limitation and step into a new sense of who I am. And to do that in the context of community and other people that know me. So that's really important. It's been important for me. For me, it's like I see it as a vitamin that is necessary for our soul's development. Uh, and as you're listening, I'm sure you can think of times in your life when you've gone through rites of passage, that haven't been so scripted. But when you look back at it, it was truly a rite of passage. And for sure, I honor all of those. I honor the ones that I've gone through as well. That you know, getting married. I mean, that is a rite of passage for sure. But like, moving out of my parents' house and getting my own apartment, so on and so forth. Different kinds of things. In life. But the other perspective that I wanted to bring in that I think is really important for our men's work and our men's groups, when we're in the groups doing the work, is something that emerged out of facilitating the groups that I've been facilitating and listening and noticing, what comes up for people who have been in doing the work in the groups for 6 months, a year, even 2 years, even more than 2 years. I've had some members in my groups, and there's things that are states of illumination, new insights come through during the groups or in between, and then people share about it, men share about it. So there's new states of consciousness that emerge, and that's certainly part of the rite of passage experience. And then there's a stage, right? There's a distinction between a state of consciousness and a stage of consciousness. And I'm definitely borrowing here from the integral philosophy. I learned about it through Ken Wilber and other thinkers in that realm, that school of thought, so to speak. So they talk about states and stages in terms of our adult development. So there's a difference, right? When you have a state, it's an insight that comes to you. A stage is when that insight has been integrated, and that's just where you're operating from. That's your worldview now. So that integration happens. And then there's the same. Then there's another aspect where another distinction I'd like to make that's related to this, which is called which I call cycles and spirals. So similarly so we have states and stages, right? You have a new insight and then it's integrated. A cycle is when something, a triggering event, comes back around. For example, for me, it's Thanksgiving every year. I feel like I'm in a new place. Excuse me, I just need to take a drink here. I've done a lot of work. I've been growing. And then I go to Thanksgiving and there's all these people I haven't seen for a year. There's my family. And I get triggered. My old stuff, my old patterns come up. How I used to feel when I was a kid, not good enough, a lot of different things. Those patterns get triggered. And so that's a cycle, right? Of every year at a certain time, or a seasonal cycle, whatever it is, triggering events remind me and bring me back into patterns that I thought I had left behind. I listened to Michael Meade. He's a mentor of mine. I listened to his talks and teachings for many years. And, he says, if you have a journal and you look at your journal, from one year to the next, it's always the same stuff that's in there. We're working on those things for our whole life, so that's that cyclical patterning of our life. What men's work does, and other kinds of conscious engagement with life, what it does is transforms that cycle into a spiral, so that when we come back around to that triggering event, that we're actually are in a different place. We're evolving, we're spiraling. And so that's kind of like a parallel dimension, or a expanded view, a longer term view of states and stages, right? A stage is an integrated place, whereas states are, insights that just come to you that could evaporate, and then you go back to your old way of seeing things. Cycles are when those patterns come back around, and spirals are when we have truly excuse me. Spirals are when we have truly integrated the stage of development that we've been working through, and that cycle becomes a spiral. So I wanted to talk about that in the context of rites of passage, where we're having experience of an expanded state of consciousness. And if you just do that as an isolated event without community, without a group of people to listen to, your experience, and to help you integrate it and walk it out into your everyday life, so you can create a new stage, be engaging from a different stage, then you do cycle back, and those patternings from your past get triggered, and you just kind of relapse, so to speak, into old ways of seeing things. But when you have that community of other men doing the work, then you spiral, you evolve, you break through. And so that's what we're working on here, about this, with this weekly men's group, moving ahead, having insights, having states of expanded consciousness that can then be integrated into stages of development, uh, and so that our cycles can become spirals. And then, in addition to the weekly groups, like I said in the previous podcast, uh, we are going to be building in rites of passage experiences, sweat lodge, vision quest, time on the land together in our bodies, out in nature, around a fire, so that we can go deep, and to declare in that sacred context, I'm stepping into a new reality, I'm stepping into a new level in my life, and I'm going to keep moving from that level. So wanted to share that with you today. Thanks so much for listening, and yeah, let's keep going. Look forward to hearing you excuse me, look forward to being with you on the next one.